Welcome to Chapter 9, Resourcing and Accelerating Projects. So we'll just keep rolling here. So here's the objectives, or the sections in this chapter. This is a fairly long chapter, but understand it goes back to and it integrates with everything we've talked about up to this point. And I'll go over these briefly. Again, this is no substitute for actually reading the chapter and making yourself familiar with what's going on. So they're the objectives. So science and art of resourcing projects. Note the science and art part. Let me go back again to that. Science and art. Well, the science part about this is what can be calculated or numerically identified. Timetables, averages, things of that nature. The variable that, or the element of project management that becomes more art-like, is managing the people. And people resources are the key to this chapter, in that you're trying to understand and how to staff a project with the right people at the right place at the right time. In addition, on the right team and with the right types of people, or the right characteristics of the people that are going to be in that. Okay, so it's all about optimization. So selecting people who will work well in teams. You don't want people that can't. I mean, it's project management. This is dependent upon you, the project manager. Which person needs to accomplish individually and collectively, or what needs to be done. And instead of going through each and every one of these, which you can read, is just understand. Knowing your people well and their strengths and weaknesses is critical to optimizing the performance within a project. And so this is where I've tried to send out as much as possible the idea about, let me think how to say this, understanding yourself, your soft skills, or your emotional intelligence. I think I just sent that out. You'll want to take that so you can identify your strengths and weaknesses in that regard, and where you can improve and where you can maximize or leverage your skills already. Resource-led schedule is technically brilliant. So resource-based tools, machine tools, tractors, excavators, those types of things. The mechanical side of this, technically brilliant, but little acceptance from those who must do the work. Do the work has little value, if it has little value, if they see it that way. A motivated team can make up for a bad plan, because they can overcome those things. Projects and being able to identify trade-offs is a key management ability that, even if it's not within project management skills, but most projects, or most every department you're going to work in or be exposed to, whether it's accounting and finance or marketing, has projects. So being able to identify trade-offs, and trade-offs are strengths and weaknesses. And so if you've got three choices, all three may work as a option to do something. However, one of the three might be a better choice than others, given the circumstances that you're working in. So for a project manager to be maximizing and gaining their ultimate success, it's being able to identify these trade-offs and choosing the wisest choice. And again, sometimes it's a moving target, especially when we're talking about agile practices and things like that. People often constitute a large portion of the total project cost. If you've ever had a car worked on in the last year or so, you can attest to the fact that labor is incredibly expensive, and skill levels are going to affect that. People, the most challenging aspect of a project is because people are variable. The same person might react two different ways on a given day, or in a given circumstances, or who they're working with. So there's a lot resting on the skills that a project manager has or doesn't have in order to maximize output. So there's dominated schedules, scope constrained schedule versus resource constrained. Now they go together. These are not mutually exclusive, but we have to be aware of both at the same time. So activity versus resource dominated schedule basis comparison. Time in project when scope is determined. Well, here activity based, it's early because we can calculate it. More on resources, then it's later because we learn things as we go, and resources may be more effective or less effective. And then you can just go down the line. It becomes valuable then to have experience within a project and again, to know your people. So there we go, estimating activity, resources, quality and quantity. Let me jump down here. So role description, project team member, the roles, assigned duties, limits of authority. So when I talked about this in class the other day, I mentioned limits on authority. Sometimes, and this is not a good situation, you have all sorts of responsibility but not the authority to affect the outcome. That might be unavoidable in a sense because you've got stakeholders that are powerful, but you really want to be careful about lines of authority or limits on authority. You need it because you need checks and balances in a bureaucratic and highly complex project. You have to have that, but that impasse there where authority isn't given or allowed can really slow things down. Now, it's not to say that it's not necessary, but you just have to be aware of that weakness within the system. So work functions, job titles, professional discipline, identifying potential resources. Resource breakdown structure, all resources into main categories, one level, and populating each main category with resources based on either function or skill level. You're putting your team together here, and you're trying to quantify this as you go. So it's not just, impressions, but it's as best you can, you've quantified things in a reasonable sense. Here's a look at a project management software you do that in. Cross-functional teams. I've always had personally an affinity for cross-functional teams because I believe they're probably the best at achieving results because you've got the necessary skill sets within the team from the get-go. Co-located teams, meaning they're in the same building or the same area. That can be advantageous. Virtual teams, there's advantages there too because you can get talent from anywhere in the world, but there's trade-offs. And then, of course, outsourcing, where you lose a little control, but you might be able to even tap into greater abilities. And remember, if you can turn a fixed cost or somebody that works for you full-time into a variable, like outsourcing, that can look good on from a financial consideration. You might have to become a mediator, understand and speak effectively with people. Not to overemphasize this, but it's something we've been talking about all term, and that's the skills to communicate are at a premium in this case. Culture of sharing, collaborating, and supporting each other. That's what we're looking for. Co-located teams especially, and it would be teams no matter where their location, but that culture is habits. Get a habit of sharing, and what this boils down to, I mentioned earlier about emotional intelligence, and really what it boils down to, if you read it closely, is maturity. It's not all about me, it's about the project being successfully completed. You don't necessarily need the accolades that come from it or to get your way. It's about producing the best results in the project. That's a sign of maturity in my estimation, and that's really what you're looking for. And it's not age related necessarily, it's attitude related and personality. Okay, I'm just skipping ahead a little bit here. There's again another shot, Microsoft shot of a Gantt chart with Microsoft Project, which you might want to download and run with as a free trial. Okay. Methods of resolving resource overloads, reorder activities. Sometimes things get overscheduled. I mean, that does and can happen. So this is why it takes constant monitoring. That's a critical thing when we talk about projects. It's constant. That software that you were using to communicate the progress or lack thereof, constant attention. It's sort of like the dash of your car. If a red light comes on, you might want to figure out what's going on there. And there again, so we can see it. Resource leveling, again, we're trying to normalize things. And I think that's probably as far as I need to go. Reduce actions to reduce critical path, assign more resources. Sometimes if you can bring more personnel or better personnel in that can make up for time lapses and things like that. But again, it just takes constant vigilance as to watching the status of a project. Okay, that's probably enough to get you going. If you have questions, let me know, but take care, and I will see you soon.